Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Tectonic Takes. I'm your co-host, Ivan Ornella, here with William Schneider. Will, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you again for having me back on.
Yeah, so we just want to explain that from here on out, we're going to be doing a rotation of sorts. So there will be two co-hosts for every podcast, some combination of me, Fabian, and Will. So there might be some occasions where all three of us get the podcast, but because several of us are in points of transition in our life, especially Fabi, who recently moved to Japan and is figuring everything out there and has a kid on the way, we figure that this will allow us to have this podcast appropriately manned, and no matter what happens, we'll be able to provide the amount and the quality of content that you guys have grown accustomed to here on Tectonic Takes. And Will did a great job in his first appearance here, and Fabian and I, we both agreed that we're glad to have you as our third and equal regular guest now.
I appreciate it. It was awesome that you guys extended this offer, and I couldn't say no.
All right. So, and we also want to thank our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, and acknowledge that this podcast is brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network. And now that we have that out of the way, so I feel like this is a pretty tough week to assess because on one hand, you have a 3-0 loss to Portland. On the other hand, you have a 4-0 win to LA Galaxy. So, and you lost heavily to a good team. You beat a bad team convincingly. So, where do you think San Jose Quakes is at the moment mentally?
Um, Mentally, I don't know where they're exactly at mentally. I mean, obviously they're on kind of a high because they just had a dominant win over the LA Galaxy, but at the same time, they probably in the back of their minds they're little uneasy, against higher competition that they aren't able to put up a better performance against.
Yeah, so if you subscribe to the theory that you're only as good as your last game, then San Jose Earthquakes are doing great, but last game is the only one that applies.
Yeah, I mean that's what you kind of look at. The last one is the one that matters the most, I guess. But yeah, I mean overall, obviously it was great. But as Quake fans are looking at the schedule right now, it is a little worrisome since we do play Seattle coming up here in the next couple of days.
Yeah, we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. For the longest part in the season, it feels like an expansive savanna. Like you just keep going and going and going, and you don't know when the regular season is going to stop. But when these last games were announced, that put it in perspective. It's like, okay, now we know exactly when this season ends. These are all the games we can look forward to. We don't have to worry about a COVID situation, which is the case for a few MLS clubs. Thankfully, not San Jose Earthquakes. And now that it's come down to these last 5 games, where you have Seattle Sounders twice, you have LAFC, surprisingly kind of decent Vancouver Whitecaps team now, and Real Salt Lake, it does make it real. It's like, okay, let's get down to business.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, we have these last stretch of games, and it's it's a playoff push now. It's time for trying to make the playoff spot. And yeah, like you said, the Vancouver Whitecaps are somehow in a playoff spot. I guess that's what happens when you win a couple of games in a row. You can just be in a playoff spot, and we kind of seen that with the Quakes. We won a couple of games in a row, and we are in a playoff spot now. And so, I mean, like I said in our last podcast, anything can happen in the Wild West, and clearly Vancouver has made a statement about how wild it's been right now.
Yeah, it's a Wild West and East. I feel like we'll get into it when we go over the current standings. But there's really only the bottom teams of each conference, like the literal last place team, that I could say with some confidence it's not going to be their year to make the playoffs, but everyone else is still in the mix. Um, where do you think you stand right now in terms of, are you mostly optimistic about this Quakes side? Are you mostly pessimistic? It's like, oh, we're beating the crappy teams, but we're not competing with the teams that we want to, or are you somewhere in the middle?
I'm gonna go with the middle because I felt like last season with the Quakes games that we should have won, we didn't win. Um, and it's good to see
Mm-hmm.
that now we are winning games that we're supposed to win. Like if you look at the standings or you look at the matchups, we're supposed to win these games, and we are finally doing that at least as of right now, of course. But yeah, I mean, I felt like sometimes last season they just couldn't finish. The games that they definitely should have won, put away, and they didn't against teams they should have. And right now, at least they are as of right now.
All right, so we're going to get into greater detail on each of these games and continue to pick at what are some signs that this team is for real and what are some signs that there's still a lot of work to do. First game that we're going to cover today is the October 11th match at Providence Park, where the Portland Timbers ran out 3-0 winners over the San Jose Earthquakes. The lineups were as follows. So the Timbers started Clark in goal, a back line of Farfan, Zuparic, Tuiloma, and Jorge Villafana. Then their holding midfielders were Diego Chara and Eric Williamson. And then their wingers were Loria and Yumi Chara, with Valeri in that cam role and Jaroslav Niezgoda, their starting striker. And they used up 4 of their substitutions, bringing on Mora in the 59th minute, as well as Jeremy Ebobisse, Konechny in the 73rd minute, and Zambrano in the 87th minute. So it seems like we see some rotations here and there every time we've played Portland lately, but other than when they don't play Steve Clark in their starting goalkeeping role, it doesn't feel like a huge drop off between the first choice starters and then the rotation guys.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem like there's much difference when it comes to the Timbers. I mean, yes, they are rotating their lineups, but it doesn't really seem to matter, at least when they play the Quakes. Either way, it's still a tough matchup every time we play Portland.
Right. The Quakes lineup was JT Marcinkowski in goal, the back line of Nick Lima, Osvaldo Alanis making his return, Tanner Beeson, and Tommy Thompson, with Jay Salinas covering for Tim Thompson as the only sub of this match in the 4th minute. Judson was in the defensive midfield role, had Rios and Yule in more advanced center midfield roles. The wingers were Christian Espinoza and Carlos Fierro, and good old Wando up top. So one thing that shocked me, not more so than the lineups, was being down most of the second half. You only make one substitution. Is this just simply due to fatigue? It's like, okay, we're probably going to lose this game. Let's save as many of these guys as possible for the game against LA Galaxy. Or do you think Almeida felt like this was the lineup that you need to have on the field, minus Tommy Thompson, who was subbed in for Salinas, to get anything out of this match?
I mean, you can see how right now the Quakes are playing a lot of games in a short amount of time. I mean, that's I think most of how the MLS schedule is. So I can see why Matthias wouldn't do the subs, and then maybe, like you said, they did score multiple goals really quickly, and maybe he definitely thought this game was out of reach. I mean, it was 0-0 going into half, and but right away after you concede a goal and concede 2 goals rather quickly. I think probably Matthias didn't feel like it was necessary to bring other subs on.
Yeah, so it was an even first half. It remained 0-0 going into halftime. And looking at the yellow cards as well, 2 Portland Timbers players picked up yellow cards, 1 midfielder and 1 defender. So if anything, like, San Jose would have been the happier of the 2 teams going into halftime. But then the worst times to concede goals right before and right after halftime. And not only did they concede 1 goal, Niezgoda got a brace shortly into the second half. What do you think changed for the Timbers?
I mean, the first goal of the game happened. I mean, excuse me, yeah, the first goal of the game happened really quickly, right after the first half. I think it was
Hmm.
obviously, I think the 46th minute. So, I mean, I think it was just a lack of defensive execution on Alanise's part. I mean, we'll break it down a little bit more in a little bit, but I feel like it was something that was preventable. And I understand Alanis has been out of the lineup for quite some time, but I mean he's a veteran, and he definitely should have had that. Better played up a little bit closer to the attacker, to defend that ball more properly. But he let in a goal, and it was nothing JT could have done there. And fortunately, it was just a momentum crusher for the Quakes.
Yeah, it was definitely momentum pressure. However, they did have their chances to hit back in this game. When that ball fell to Carlos Ferro, I thought that was easily going to be 2-1. We're back in the game, but it was a pretty bad miss.
Yeah, we've seen Carlos struggle when it comes to finishing. In the final third. It's just I don't know. I don't know where he's at. I mean, we can talk even also in that Galaxy game. He's had chances where he's had chances to score goals, and games prior he's just not finishing. It's maybe it could just be a lack of just awareness, goal awareness, just because he's been sporadic on times being on the field. He like I said, we've seen a lot of them just because due to Vaco being gone. Um, but like I said,
Mhm.
he needs to be finishing these chances. If he's probably finishing a decent amount of these chances, I mean, he might be pushing a reason why to stay out there compared to Vaco, just because Vaco hasn't been scoring as much. If Fierro is the one scoring a lot more, I mean, why wouldn't you put him in the lineup more? But yeah, he hasn't been finishing, and that's his problem right now. But he's been doing well in the assist part. I'll give him that.
Yeah, you get more of the benefit of the doubt if you're not scoring when you're a DP because as long as you have that DP tag, it means that we believe in you. We spent a lot of money in you. We've seen what you're capable of. So even if you go through a rough patch, we would bet on you getting out of it more than we would bet on you continuing it. And Vaco is definitely someone that we want to be involved in the team as much as possible, which unfortunately will limit Carlos Fierro's playing time when he's not away on international duty or otherwise suspended or injured. So it was disappointing. It was definitely the more disappointing of the two blown chances. The other being the goal off the corner kick. It looked like a pretty clean goal. Unfortunately, Tanner Beeson's tap in, it was judged offside. What do you think? It looked like a really close call.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when it comes to offsides like that, it's gonna either go either way. I mean, we see time and time again where the calls could just go either way. Where either it's gonna be onside and we're gonna be loving it, we're gonna have a goal, or it's offsides and it's a momentum. Like I said, always talking about momentum, and in key sports and anything, and of course soccer, like it's important to have momentum, and that would have helped the Quakes, try to have a chance to win this game or even tie it, which I was hoping for, but obviously not. But yeah, like I said, it was close, and fortunately, it just didn't fall our way.
Yeah, I'm going to chalk that up as a learning experience with Tanner Beeson because this is his first year in professional soccer, and we've already seen some high highs and some low lows for him. He's been thrown into some difficult situations, and I feel like that's a mistake a lot of players would make more experience than him. Like if you're in that position on a corner kick and you have the opportunity to tap it in, you're not thinking so much, am I onside? Am I onside? Offside? Maybe you are, but your main priority is put the ball in the back of the net and ask questions later. But as you do get that experience, you do have to be aware of maybe the ball was going in anyway, or maybe not take a chance to let it come off a defender and maybe I tap it in off their attempted clearance or something. But yeah, also if I had it my way, if I was writing the rules of the game, I would say on corner kicks, there's no such thing as offside until the ball is cleared outside the 18. Then that following onslaught, there could be an offside call.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it doesn't seem like a lot of rules would be changed. I feel like when it comes to rules in soccer to change, I feel like it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where like it's millimeters maybe, but that is all it takes to be offside, and hopefully the Quakes will benefit from being on the other end of that situation where goal gets chalked up just by the skin of the teeth. Um, Timbers scored one late and made it 3-0. Do you think that changed how this match would be looked at either way, or at that point, it's just like we were already losing, like letting them score a third goal wouldn't hurt too much?
No, I mean, I think it's better than us giving up 6 goals, which we have done in the past. But I mean, yeah, we gave it up. It kind of is what it is, and I mean, we saw how the Quakes, pushed forward and moved on from this game.
Yeah, we're seeing this now, but who knows how the standings will shake up and if there will be a golden situation where we'll look back at maybe not this game, but definitely some of the heavier defeats where like, oh man, if we just kept it tight or maybe lost by 2 goals or something, then that would have been better. But I think right now with the Earthquakes having picked up so many points in their other games, you can live with a 3-0 loss. But still, it's a bit frustrating to lose again to Portland by a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we've played them several times now, and we haven't had any real success with that against Portland. And unfortunately, if we're going to make a long run in the playoffs or anything, we're probably going to have to face this team, and we need to figure out a way to actually score against them and win a game.
Do you think Portland Timbers could win the MLS Cup?
I don't see why they couldn't. I mean, they won, right, the MLS back tournament champs, right? The Portland Timbers. I don't see why they couldn't. And honestly,
Yeah.
I couldn't see why any team couldn't. I feel like there's been plenty of times where we've seen teams that get in the playoffs and just perform, outstanding. And I feel like that's what the case was for Seattle not too long ago. I don't think they were high up in the standings, and they won the whole thing with no problem with ease.
Yeah, when you think of like the heavy hitters in the Western Conference this year, you think of Seattle, LAFC, and if you want to extend it to Sporting Kansas City, FC Dallas, and Minnesota United, maybe we'll end the list there. I feel like you favor Portland to win against most of those teams, and then the ones that you don't favor Portland, where it's even, or maybe they're even underdogs, like against Seattle Sounders, maybe. Uh, you definitely feel like they can beat anybody if they play as well as they have throughout this regular season.
Yeah, I just think their lineup's very solid.
Yeah, and not just their lineup. I think the key is the Timbers have a large amount of depth. Like they're pulling Jeremy Wilbise, a player who would start week in, week out for most teams in MLS off the bench in this game. And he's someone who's in the U.S. men's national team conversation or should be. And they built this roster like they have keys, but they're not bringing in Zlatans. They're not bringing in David Villas or Sebastian Javinkos. These are players that don't have the largest reputations in Europe or even South America, but they go at least 18 deep, and this is a really well constructed team. And this is what we hope that San Jose Earthquakes can become, as we have seen some positive signs from many of our own starters and rotation players. But this is just another level right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always great when you have depth on your team, and Portland is doing it right, and other teams need to look at how they can do that for their own squad.
What did you think of Osvaldo Alanis' first game back? I think it wasn't the return that we would have liked, but it's always tough when you're back from injury.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you come back from injury, of course. I'm not going to try to really rip on Oswaldo too much as I want to. I was just hoping for just a solid, a veteran game. He's been in for a very long time. I mean, he's been around and playing in multiple leagues, and I feel like he could have had a better start. But I guess maybe he just had a lot of rust. A lot of games without playing, and I feel like it hurt the Quakes, and it was too bad that Youngworth wasn't there. I think it could have been a different outcome if Florian was out there.
Yeah, I think some people are already kind of off the Alana ship that they think that this player isn't good enough to start for the San Jose Quakes. That's honestly a load of crap. I think we've seen more good than bad from him over the course of this season, and that has been interrupted for various reasons. But overall, he's going to be an asset to have on this roster for as long as the Quakes can have him because he is on loan.
That is true. He is on loan, but yeah, hopefully he brings more to the table than what we're trying to give to him.
And then one last note for individual player accomplishments this game. So along with the brace from Niazgoda, Diego Chara, he got a couple of assists. This is a longtime Portland Timbers player who is getting up there in age, but he is still contributing in all aspects of the game for Portland Timbers.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, insult the MLS thinking that this is an old man's league. But for an old man that we're calling him, he's still producing, and that's what you want from a veteran like Chara, and he's doing that for Portland, and that's what we try to hope anytime you bring a veteran onto your team.
Yeah, there's some older players that would definitely struggle in MLS simply because of the physicality and pace of this league. It's like North American, not necessarily Premier League, but like EFL Championship. Like, okay, these aren't the stars of the world, but there's still a lot of hungry, driven players and beautiful players that are hoping to play well and maybe get a move up at some point in their career. But I feel like another player that I think would do well in this league, similar to Diego Chara, and maybe he's going to retire before he gets a chance to play in MLS again, but the Canadian player Atiba Hutchinson, who has been even into his late 30s, he's been playing well in the Turkish Super League. So that's who Diego Chara reminds me of. That Hutchinson plays a more deeper midfield role, but has endless energy and it makes his team better.
Yeah, no, it'd be great to bring a player into that league, into MLS like that. I mean, yeah, he's definitely been in the Turkish league for a very long time, and it'd be cool. You never know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's kind of like Frank Gore in the NFL. Like maybe he'll never retire.
Yeah, that's true. He just keeps on moving.
So we'll briefly go through the stats. So the shots, Timbers had the advantage 16-11, but a bit more positively, they only had an 8-7 advantage of shots on target. So San Jose Earthquakes, despite a few bad misses, they were efficient with their shots. They just couldn't get past Steve Clark. Possession was an advantage for the San Jose Earthquakes, 54%. It's been a bit of a pattern in some of these games that they've lost, but it just shows that like when they have more possession, sometimes they run out of ideas. Well, teams like Portland and Seattle are so efficient with their possession, they don't need to win the possession battle to win games by a lot, which is very scary for not just San Jose Earthquakes, but the rest of MLS.
Yeah, definitely. But I wanted to talk about something with the Quakes is where are any of these goals coming from set pieces? I think you put on your
yeah.
I feel like it's something we haven't really talked about. I know we haven't talked about in the last couple of weeks. I'm just thinking like we're losing to 3-0 to Portland, and we haven't talked about why the Quakes can't execute on set pieces. Sorry I kind of changed on the tangent here, but I was looking at your notes and it said the corners advantage for the Quakes was 7-3. And it brought to my attention that we should probably be addressing why having the Quakes, really score any goals from set pieces. I feel like I haven't seen any in a while.
Yeah, and the corners advantage for Portland Timbers is related to how, despite their lack of possession compared to the San Jose Earthquakes, that they have been efficient in their attacks, that they're taking chances, that they're forcing saves, they're forcing deflections for corners. As the Quakes have struggled to set pieces on the offensive side of the ball, I feel like there's several players on any given Quakes lineup that are capable of taking a free kick, taking a corner kick, I'm less confident that they have enough of the big bodies, especially when Pasha are unavailable, to win those aerial headers and those battles there to score a lot of these corner kick goals, which do come off headers a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean, generally, that's what you try to do off corner kicks. You usually try to get a header in for goal. I haven't really kind of paid attention to honestly who's. I know Espinoza's usually taking the corners, but I knew on one side when we had Magnus Eriksson, he would take corners on the other side. I don't know if it's been just Espinoza
Mm-hmm.
on both sides. I don't know if you've really noticed if it's just been Espinoza taking the free kicks the whole time.
I feel like it's definitely been mostly Espinoza. I don't think Vaco is much of a free kick take. I mean, a corner kick taker. Probably more of a free kick taker. I think you'd rather have Wondolowski in the box, but he could take a set piece kick if needed, and like Jackson Ewell too. But it's definitely been Espinoza leading that committee.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe just one side he is not as good because they were trying to use Erickson, but maybe that's affecting it. But yeah, I don't think we would ever
Maybe
see
Marcos Lopez, like he scored a pretty good banger, so like that could be a skill that can be applicable to set piece situation.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I just wanted to point this out for all the Quakes fans. I mean, this is something we kind of need to execute to try to win these games, especially against good teams like
Stats
Portland
for
and
the
Seattle.
Quakes. A little more stats for the Quakes. So passing accuracy, Quakes had an 87% advantage compared to the Timbers' 83%. The biggest concerns in this game would have been the fouls and offsides. So Quakes had 20 fouls in that game and 4 offsides. Timbers only 7 fouls and 0 offsides. And miraculously, with that volume of fouls, the teams were even with 2 yellow cards apiece. So yeah, when you're fouling 20 times a game, it does show a lack of control.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 20 fouls is that's absurd. It's crazy that we had that many fouls. Yeah, I mean, obviously we were just out of sync, and we were committing way too many fouls and way too many offsides, and we just couldn't put it all together.
Yeah, and with momentum being the word of this game, when you're constantly giving away free kicks for fouls, that makes it very hard to stack momentum on your side.
Oh yeah, 100%.
All right, one stud, one dud. You go first for this one, and then I'll go first for the next game.
All right. I'm gonna take it a little different. I feel like when you guys do studs and duds, I don't know. I haven't listened to every single podcast, but I feel like it's usually
Mm-hmm.
you talked about a Quakes player. Um, but for a stud, I'm gonna go with Clark from the Portland Timbers. I feel like in the beginning, in the first half, he made a lot of good saves against the Quakes, and I feel like if for the Quakes, unfortunately, if they got one in or so, it could have been obviously a completely different game. So I'm gonna fortunately give the stud to the goalkeeper for the Portland Timbers. Um, as far as my dud goes, unfortunately, it's gonna have to be Oswaldo Alanis. I was hoping for, being like I said, a better game from him, and he, obviously we can figure out all the reasons why he didn't play well, but at the end of the day, he didn't, and I'm gonna have to give him the dud.
So my stud for this game, it's not any player on any team. It's the fact that the San Jose Earthquakes remained above the playoff line despite the loss. So the standings are the stud. Like that just shows how much that this organization has turned things around. That we can absorb a heavy loss and we still be in an okay position. That's really the biggest positive I could take from that game because no one really stood out for San Jose Earthquakes as someone who played exceptionally well. For the dud, I'm gonna have to go with Carlos Fierro because he had that biggest opportunity for the Quakes in that game. You're down by 2 goals. It becomes a different game and a different outlook, even if Fierro puts in the back of the net. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and he's got to be efficient and clinical. And fortunately, he wasn't there. Any final thoughts on this game?
No, not too much. I'm just hoping the Quake. I mean, obviously it'll be a little bit different lineup next time we face Portland. I'm just hoping the Quakes can kind of just find a way to score. Well, first off, find a way to score goals against Portland. I feel like it's been way too long since we scored goals against Portland, and I think we just need to find a way to have a complete game against them and win. I think that's what's been lacking with the Quakes against Portland.
Perhaps fortunately, Portland Timbers are no longer on the season schedule anymore for the San Jose Earthquakes, but there is one more game for the Quakes scheduled at Providence Park when they will be playing the pseudo home team Vancouver Whitecaps, since of course Canadian teams are kind of exiled right now due to the COVID situation.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a good.
All right, so next we have October 14th match in Dignity Health Sports Park in not LA, California, also known as Carson, where the San Jose Earthquakes won by an astonishing 4-0 win over LA Galaxy. And I say astonishing because, yeah, the Galaxy are the bottom team of the table, but they're still LA Galaxy. They still have some pretty good MLS level players on their team, so you never know what you're going to get, especially when you face them in their home stadium. So, what were your initial thoughts on this game?
First initial thoughts were Nick Lima and Andy Rios. Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously go into great detail about both of them, but my first initial thoughts was wow from Nick Lima and wow from Andy Rios. I mean, it was great to see what they did. But yeah, those gonna be my first initial thoughts. We'll slowly get into obviously deeper thoughts about both of them in a moment here.
Since I live in San Diego, I do get the home games for the LA Galaxy and the LAFC available to me on TV. So I do get to watch San Jose Earthquakes without ESPN Plus, and I get to hear the different commentators, and it is very interesting to hear their takes sometimes. They pretty much from start to finish that they acknowledge that San Jose Earthquakes were the sharper team, and I know it probably hurt them to say that, but at least we know that other people or other organizations across MLS are acknowledging that right now San Jose Earthquakes, they're not a team to be taken lightly.
No, I mean definitely not. I feel like I mean we have our moments. The Quakes have their moments when we're on, and I also just feel like we were the sharper team just because LA Galaxy have been struggling so much this season.
Yep. There was 65% possession for the San Jose Earthquakes in the first 15 minutes of the game. And at that point, I was thinking, okay, this is good, but where's the goal? Because we've seen so many times this season where Quakes, they have the better run of play, but they don't capitalize. And then one split second forces them to concede a goal. So overall, it was a pretty good start for San Jose Earthquakes from the beginning of this game.
Oh yeah, I mean I there's not much to really complain about on this game too much from the Quake side.
Yeah, this game could have been very different though, because around the 30-minute mark, uh, Florian Jungwirth he committed a foul just outside the box, and Galaxy weren't able to score from that position. But for the next 10 minutes or so, Galaxy had most of the ball. They were starting to find the final third a bit more often. Andy Rios wasted a good opportunity in the 40th minute, so those were nervous times to Quakes, and definitely shows that LA Galaxy do have some class still with them. Like it's tough to be the bottom team of the league, but it's not like they are completely hopeless like we've seen some other bottom teams in the MLS.
No, they're definitely not hopeless. I mean, they have so much talent. It's very surprising that we even mentioned that the Quakes won 4-0 against the Galaxy, or it's hard to even mention that LA Galaxy are on the bottom of the table right now. It's it's like I said, we talked about before. They're just having an off season, and who knows what's going to happen with if this is going to keep happening. When it might be a new coach for the LA Galaxy if this is what's been going on with their season.
I'll briefly mention this that I'm not sure if it's official or not, but I have been hearing stuff about Guillermo Barros Gelato being sacked and Robbie Keane, who was a very great player for LA Galaxy during his time in MLS, making Ireland tournaments even while playing at MLS, that he could be the replacement head coach. He's another inexperienced head coach that was a former player along the same lines of Landon Donovan down in San Diego Loyal and um, Pirlo in Juventus, but I feel like that might not be the worst idea.
No, I don't say why we would oppose to it. Or at least, sorry, maybe not as Quakes fans, but
We would oppose to it because
we
we
would
don't want
oppose.
to go against Robbie
Yeah,
Keane again.
yeah. That but I mean, as far as the MLS and as far as the LA Galaxy goes, I mean, I don't see why a great player for the Galaxy and a great player for Ireland, as in Robbie Keane, it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it would hurt him. To at least see where it goes. I mean, I feel like you can always get a new coach. I feel like, obviously.
The first goal of the game came in uh, it was the 42nd minute, I want to say. It was sometime. It was the 44th minute, sorry. Nick Lima got it going. Andy Rios set him up following a botched clearance by LA Galaxy, which feels like the type of goals that San Jose Quakes were giving up regularly earlier in the season. But what a time and what a way to score your first MLS goal of this season for Nick Lima, right?
Oh yeah, I was surprised. I mean, just that was all of that was just surprising. First off, Andy Rios with the assist. I mean, that's crazy in itself. And then for the person to get the goal, I mean, it was Nick Lima. I mean, to see that, I feel like the Quakes defenders are getting a lot more into the scoring. Is just great to see because we need scoring from everyone, and we're kind of getting that. And it was great to see Nick Lima get rewarded, and it was awesome.
Yeah, the first two goals of this game for the San Jose Earthquakes came in the 44th minute, right before halftime, and the 52nd minute, which is very similar to the times where they conceded the first two goals against the Portland Timbers. So it was a great way to turn a 180 and show that you're going to bounce back from a frustrating loss and get a good result here. Um, Carlos Fierro to Andy Rios assisting is always a nice sight to see two of the most criticized players on this team able to contribute in that instance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen Fierro have a lot of his misses for goals, but he has been getting on the assist column. I feel like we've seen his name a lot now on the assist column, or maybe, excuse me, not a lot, but we are seeing his name more often than none. And Rios, I mean, he's scoring. Quakes Nation, you're hearing it, man. You're seeing it. He's scoring goals. I wish Favi was here to really talk about his love for Andy Rios. I'd love to really hear his opinion now. Rios is producing.
Yeah, if I were to be a little bit critical, I would mention that it wasn't the best of cross, and it was a bit of a product of poor LA Galaxy defending once again. But you got to capitalize on those mistakes, and good on them. There was a moment where Christian Pavon, you always expect that he's going to have two or three blistering runs in a game. He's one of the best wingers, if not the best winger in the league, and he almost got a crucial Galaxy goal. Florian Youngworth did enough to get in the way of that, and then JT Martinkowski made the save. And just that understanding they have with each other and the way they communicate, I feel like that's going to be a partnership that could yield some good results for the San Jose Earthquakes moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was for the Galaxy side. It was very unfortunate. I mean, I think they're expecting a lot from all their players, and especially from Pavone. But I mean, all around, it was great to see Youngworth and JT work side by side and make sure they didn't concede a goal.
Yeah, and if you thought that San Jose Earthquakes fans were ever harsh toward Andy Rios, then you do not want to go on Twitter, on Galaxy Twitter, when they're losing a game because they have a lot of choice words with Chicharito, uh, considering he just hasn't been productive. Like we've seen it a few times where Hernandez, he hasn't been able to put together a good run of games in a Galaxy shirt. And I can't tell you why, because he's succeeded in almost every other club he's played for.
Yeah, like who knows? I mean, at this point, but obviously it's clear and evident that he just doesn't have. He's lacking confidence, and I think it's evident that we see that, and we saw him get subbed out really early in the first. In the second half. I think it was about around the 50th minute, 53rd minute. He got subbed out, and it's terrible to see that with one player that you thought was going to do something for the Galaxy, or that you at least brought in, expecting him to do a lot of things, hasn't done anything for them.
I think this might cause other well-known players, as well as Mexican players in particular, to rethink playing for some of the LA teams, or even like Florida or something, because while it's worked out very well for Carlos Vela, Hernandez is not having a great time. Jonathan Dos Santos is not having the level of impact he did earlier. Rodolfo Pizarro in Inter Miami, he's not in the position that he hoped to be in right now in this MLS season. And then you have that out of left field transfer with Alan Pulido going to Sporting Kansas City. But he's been a good addition to that team, and he's well loved by the fans. So even though Kansas City doesn't have as much Latino fan base or community in Kansas City as in Florida or California, that it will help probably lead to them exploring their options. Any potential Liga MX players trying to make a move to MLS.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we could really say that the MLS criticism is more harsh compared to other leagues. I feel like we would probably be on the lighter side, if anything. I feel like in other leagues, their fans are, soccer is usually everything. So
Liga MX.
yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely, probably Liga MX is what definitely a league that is 100%, devoted on kind of ripping into players that aren't performing well. So I assume that honestly we would hopefully reward
Right.
from that and receive those players.
Yeah, when Alan Pulido was at Chivas de Guadalajara, he had his ups and downs, and during the downs, the fans were very down on him too. And even though Chicharito is beloved by the Chivas fans, he played so well for them before his big move to Manchester United. He would come back, and he's not scoring at least like 6 or 7 goals in a 17-game slate for those halves of a Liga MX season, then they'll turn on him. Unfortunately, that's how passionate and that's how cruel sometimes Liga MX fans can be. I know a few of them. I am one of them, but it also doesn't fly as much in MLS anymore. Maybe 10 to 15 years ago, when MLS was still trying to find its way into mainstream, that fans wouldn't mind too much. Like they don't care if David Beckham, LA Galaxy isn't playing too well, although that's kind of a lie. Some LA Galaxy fans were really harsh on David Beckham too. But now the average American soccer fan, especially the ones who are watching MLS rather than watching maybe Barcelona once every few months or something. No offense to any Barcelona fans, but the average MLS fan is a lot more knowledgeable and is realistic with their expectations, but at the same time, they know how much it costs to bring a DP, specifically one of Javier Hernandez's quality, and to see them not perform.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at some of these lineups. So San Jose Earthquakes, they started with JT Marcinkowski in goal now. He is essentially locked in there, which is great. Nick Lima, Florian Youngworth, Tanner Beeson, and Tommy Thompson in the back line. So giving Osvaldo Alanis a bit of a break. Then you have Carlos Fierro, Judson, Jackson Ewell, and Christian Espinoza in that. It's kind of a makeshift 4-4-2, but it could also be a 4-2-3-1 with Andy Rios dropping a little deeper. And then, of course, Andy Rios and Chris Wondolowski round out the 11. We got to see appearances from Paul Marie, Cade Cowell, who celebrated his 17th birthday with a win. It's incredible he's only 17, but happy birthday to Cade Cowell. Siad Haji, Luis Felipe, and Shea Salinas. So Shea Salinas, a favorite veteran, and then some of the youth players getting some minutes in this game. pretty happy with that lineup, and it's hard not to be when you win 4-0. But even before that scoreline, I think Florian Youngworth for Osvaldo and Lanis was the big change that needed to be made.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we saw what happened last game, and Flo is just, he's been one of our solid players all year, and we needed him out there, and he was out there, and he played just fine.
It is weird to say because it would be absolutely a lie a few months ago. But right now, with the amount of games Tanner Beeson has been playing and the confidence that is growing with him, and the lessons he's learning when he does make a mistake, I think if you have a healthy Tanner Beeson and a healthy Florian Youngworth, you start them two and you leave a rusty, still recovering Osvaldo Anlanis to get his fitness back.
Yeah, and I think Alanis is really going to need to build his fitness up and just get back to performing well, and hopefully we'll see him out there sooner rather than later.
Yep. For LA Galaxy, there was a notable goalkeeping change. It was not David Bingham this time, although he did have that penalty save in the last game against them. It was Jurgen Klinsmann's son, Jonathan Klinsmann, in goal. I had low-key forgot that he was at LA Galaxy until this game. What did you think of him? I think he had a good performance.
Yeah, I
as
mean,
good as a heavy loss can be.
yeah. I mean, initially when you think about it, it's so hard to say, "Oh wow, he played great." Oh yeah, what was the score? Oh, 4-0. I mean, he played amazingly. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I,
not amazing, but like he made the saves. He didn't get chipped by Tommy Thompson. Thompson did score after the save, but he was doing what he could in that situation. It was one of his few starts recently, either for LA Galaxy or his previous club in the Swiss league, whose name escapes me. So he's got to be feeling frustrated that he can't build his case to maybe get some more minutes ahead of David Bingham, better scoreline. But I don't think the loss falls solely on his shoulders.
no, it definitely doesn't. But I mean, yes, it was a big move to see that we did not see our foe of David Bingham. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I don't doubt why Klinsman would have put him in there just because. I mean, they haven't been winning. They've been giving up a lot of goals, and
Yeah.
he's trying to figure out a way to get this team, get in the right direction. And they haven't been taking any. I feel like they're taking more step backs than step forwards. And I think it was maybe a wake up call for Bingham as well. Just hey, you're obviously not necessarily our number one, and we need to figure out who is. And so definitely a wake up call for Bingham.
Yeah. The Galaxy, they play Portland Timbers soon, so that's a team that's given San Jose Earthquakes a lot of trouble. So you imagine a similar situation for LA Galaxy. It'll be interesting to see who Bingham and Klinsmann gets the next few games, as they are really in desperation mode to make the playoffs. But the rest of their lineup, Emiliano Insua, Steres, Depew, sorry, and Julian Araujo were the back line. Perry Kitchen and Sacha Klishchen were the holding midfielders. You had the more advanced midfielders of Sebastian Leitgett, Pavon, and Yoni Gonzalez. And you had Javier Hernandez up top, but he was the first to be replaced. Efrain Alvarez came in for him in the 54th minute. Even if he's having a bad game, you'd want to get more than 54 minutes out of a DP, but it just shows their offensive struggles right now. And looking at their defense, you can understand why that they're not as high in the table as they would be, even though they're not the worst defenders ever.
No, I mean they're definitely not, and it's just every time we read a LA Galaxy lineup, I mean they have names of players that we think should be doing much better than what they're getting out from. So, I mean, I'm not gonna sound like I'm LA Galaxy fan here and dwell on how bad they're performing, but I mean, it definitely is a concern for them. But I mean, as Quakes fans, should be happy that they are struggling, but yeah, they're definitely not getting what they're paid for.
Yep. Nick Lima, we talked briefly about Tommy Thompson's third goal to make it Tommy Thompson's goal to make it 3-0. Nick Lima completed his brace in stoppage time, so it was an easy man of the match performance for Nick Lima. And uh, Galaxy. One thing that was funny, when Shea Salinas came on from the bench, the Galaxy commentators called him a thorn on their side. So it was just nice to see them acknowledge that Shea Salinas does have a good record against LA Galaxy, and even the sight of him off the bench when the game's already out of hand for LA Galaxy, that is like, oh no, not him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with Salinas being with the team for so long, we can see why they would say something like that. And it's just great to get the respect that he deserves. I mean, Che has definitely been, like they said, a thorn on their side. And it was, I'm glad it was pointed out from the Galaxy commentators.
So for one stud, one dud, I'm going to, since Nick Lima was officially the man of the match, I'm going to try to pick a different player. I got to go with Tommy Thompson because the third goal, even though he didn't get the initial chip, he was able to get the ball back, get there first, and still finish the opportunity. And just like in the reverse situation in the Portland game, when you're on top, you got to take full advantage and make sure that there's no way back. And that ensured that Galaxy were doomed for another loss. And my dud would be no one. It was a 4-0 win for San Jose Earthquakes. It's against your rivals in the Cali Clasico. No one really made a bad error or anything. Everyone had more or less a good performance. It was a clean sheet. Nothing really to point to, really. But go ahead, take a stab at your stud and dud. Well,
Yeah, well, I'll start off with my dud first, and I'm gonna just go with what you went with. I mean, I can't go and think of a time during the game where I'm like, wow, someone from the Quakes was really bad. I can't think of anything. Like you said, it was a 4-0 win, and there's nothing to complain about from the Quakes side. It was a complete game, and for my stud, it is everyone's stud in their hearts for the Quakes. It is Andy Rios. I mean, come on, everybody. Assist and a goal from Andy Rios is like everything we paid for him. I mean, that was great to see. And every Quakes fan should be smiling and went to bed happy that Andy Rios got a goal and an assist. So I can't give it enough to Andy Rios to doing what he's supposed to be doing.
that once bloated stat of every goal Andy Rios has scored has cost X amount of dollars, an exorbitant amount. So I know a little bit more minutes each game passes. If I were going to pick a dud in this match, other than the entire Galaxy back line, I would probably have to pick Javier Hernandez simply because he just can't have a good game to save his life at this point. And we'll see if he can regain his confidence at any point this season, which is going to be very difficult unless he finds the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I hate to really rip on Chicharito Hernandez. I mean, I've been a big fan of his, especially when he played for West Ham. I'm a big West Ham fan as well. But I loved Chicharito, and I mean, even though I'm a USA national team, it's not like I did not pay attention when Chicharito was out there for the Mexican national team and scoring goals for them. And but yeah, it's tough to see him struggle. But I mean, I hope he only struggles against the Quakes and he can, start scoring some meaningless goals for the Galaxy.
Yeah, if he wants to score a hat trick against LAFC, by all means.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it for this match. Do you have any other comments on this, or I guess you can give me your comments if you have any left, and then I'll briefly say some stats.
No, I think we did what we're supposed to do, and I'm just happy that we hopefully can just keep this going. It was great to see Nick Lima. I mean, come on, everyone. Nick Lima scored 2 goals. I mean, when did we ever think that was going to happen? But other than that, I mean, it was a great game for the Quakes.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure of mine to text my cousin when Nick Lima scores because my cousin and Nick Lima graduated from the same class in Castro Valley High School the same year, so nice connection there. So the shots, Quakes outshot the Galaxy 19-8. The shots on goal favored Quakes 10-3. There was 3 saves made by the Quakes and 7 by the Galaxy. So, Klinsman did try to keep his side in it. The fouls were 9 for Quakes and 10 for Galaxy, so balanced, along with the corners 5-4 in favor of the Quakes, and 1 offside, Galaxy 0 for the Quakes. But we'll chalk it up to the Galaxy didn't get forward as often as they would have liked anyway.
Yeah, I mean it's what's been the story for the Galaxy. Just not doing enough, and especially in the final third. They just can't get a goal to really help themselves at all.
So if they don't make the playoffs, which is looking very realistic now, do you expect a full rebuild? Do you think big names like maybe not Chicharito because they just brought him in, but like players like, and maybe not Pavone either. He's pretty much invincible, I think, as long as he's under contract. But maybe like said Perry Kitchen, Jonathan Dos Santos, David Bingham, such a cliche that they could be on their way out? Or do you think that they might make a few changes here and there methodically because they do have some young kids that they're hopefully going to rely on for another year once they have this year of experience in the belt?
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect a real big explosion in the Galaxy team. I think they have a lot of good players, and I feel like Jurgen just really needs to figure this out. I think he needs to figure out what he's trying to build with this team, and he might actually. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of big names were gone, but I think overall we'll probably see a majority of the Galaxy stay. But who knows? I could be completely wrong, and next thing you know, everyone's gone. So we'll see. I mean, Klinsman himself might be gone. You never know. So we'll see what happens to the Galaxy, but there's definitely going to be changes to be made.
Yeah, and I think they were talking on the MLS Extra Time podcast that they were expecting certain teams, like maybe a Real Salt Lake, to have a full-on roster rebuild or overhaul over this offseason. I'm not sure the Galaxy are quite there yet because there's still enough players that maybe you'd want to give one more chance to next season, but we'll see. Other noteworthy developments: Christian Espinoza has 7 assists in MLS this season, which is tied for the 4th most in the league. What do you think of that? I was a little surprised that he was that high on the list.
I am not. I'm not surprised. I love Espinoza.
Okay, Fabi.
Yep, I'm gonna bring the little Fabi in because we're missing him on the show, and I'm gonna bring him out. But no, I mean, to be realistic, yes, 4th on the list is high. I'm not gonna say that that's not shocking to me, but I do expect Espinoza to get a lot of assists, and especially I feel like that's what he does. Yes, we love when he gets a goal, but at the end of the day, we love the assist because I think that's what his main job is to cross the ball and make plays for our goal scorers, and that's what he does.
I think, let's see, across MLS, teams have played anywhere from like 16 to 18 games this season. To have 7 assists is a pretty good return, and I think knowing that number, that's not out of the realm of possibility. That shouldn't be a surprise. But I guess I just didn't think he had 7 already, but it shows the last few weeks in particular have been really good for Christian Espinoza, as it has been for much of the San Jose Earthquakes team.
Yeah, definitely, and I expect him to have 20 assists. No, I'm just kidding, not 20 assists, but I expect at least double digits assists hopefully by end of season for Espinoza.
Okay, 3 assists in the last 5 games.
Yep,
It's doable.
it's definitely doable. I think he.
Also, mhm.
Oh, sorry. I was going. I was a little too hyped. So I was going too far, but I was just trying to say, yeah. I mean, I think he plays really well for us, and we have some matchups where we should be scoring a little more than 1 or 2 goals. So I definitely think 3 assists is definitely doable in 5 games.
Yep. So Vako and Gramkashia were on international duty with Georgia. They beat Belarus 1-0 in the playoff semifinals to qualify for Euro, still named 2020, although it's going to be in 2021. And they have their final match to qualify for the Euro tournament scheduled on November 12th against North Macedonia, which is just 4 days after the Quakes' final regular season game. So there is a slight possibility that they might not play, or they may be playing in a limited role, like maybe Vaco gets taken off a bit earlier because of how important that game is for their national team. But I'm hopeful that they get to play that game, they get to be there if we need them, and if right after they're on the next flight to Georgia, and then they can take care of business. And we'd love to see San Jose Earthquakes players at the Euros, and they're obviously our best bets of seeing them.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if they're going to be making any quick, turn and burns, here to the back to Georgia. I mean, it's obviously with this pandemic going on, it might be much harder to see. So we might not see them for quite some time now.
Yeah, that would be the worst case scenario, but we understand, especially when you're a team like Georgia. I don't think they've ever qualified for the Euros before, and partially due to, it used to be fewer teams, but they have this opportunity in front of them to make their country proud. So hopefully that they're able to do it. And lastly, so Cade Cowell's progress is being monitored by FC Barcelona, not some random Barcelona like the one in Ecuador or anything. The Barcelona in Barcelona, Spain, and it's a very interesting situation. Right now, Barcelona has two players that are American in their team. They have Serginho Dest and Conrad de la Fuente. They appear on track. They appear to be within the plans around Koeman and the club. They're not going to be regular starters or anything, at least not yet. Maybe Serginho does, but they are being in the mix. So it does seem like now more than ever, Barcelona isn't the worst place to be if you're an American player. And the additional rise of other Americans in Europe, as well as the recent transfer of Brendan Aronson from Philadelphia Union to RB Salzburg effective January, I think it shows that Barcelona, as well as other big European clubs, they're seeing the value in American and Canadian players that are coming up and trying to capitalize on their development. What did you think? Because when I first heard the news, I was thinking, wow, that's incredible, because Cade Cowell is still so early in his career.
Yeah, I mean, initially you're like, wow, that is crazy to see. Just because, yeah, Kate is still obviously just 17th birthday, but at the same time, I'm like, no, I don't want this. I like that the Quakes player is getting a
Of course
getting a.
not.
I don't want this to happen. Next thing you know, he's going to be gone. And he's going to be starting for Barcelona, and Quakes fans are going to be like, "Wow, remember when we had Cade and what happened?"
No, if he's starting over like Ousmane Dembele for Barcelona, like the minute he sets foot, like I could live with that. But the reality is, like, the fear is that if Cal were to go to Barcelona this season, it would be a huge leap up from San Jose Earthquakes to make it into the first team and play even for like Copa del Rey matches, or maybe the odd Champions League group stage game if they qualify early, which may not be the case, especially in a group with Juventus. They might have to play that sixth game to win the group. But I think it's good news for Cade Cowell. I hope that it inspires some confidence in him. Not that he doesn't already have loads of it based on the way he plays, rather than pressure, because it can affect some young players. We see it on the European side of the game often, and hopefully that's just a sign of good things to come for Cade Cowell, regardless of whether it's in a blue and black jersey or in different colors down the road.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we as people and Quakes fans are happy to see that Cade is getting attention that I guess he is deserving. I mean, obviously he must be doing something right. But yeah, hopefully it's going to be in the black and blue at least for a couple more years, maybe. Hopefully, probably not, but one could hope.
All right, time to get into some fan questions. Andy from Twitter asks, "What's your guys' thoughts on why the Quakes seem to be the most up and down team in the league? So, would you say they are the most up and down team in the league, the most inconsistent? Because I feel like that's a trait that you can attribute to so many MLS clubs because of the parity in this league.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're. I don't know. I feel like it's a hard question because I mean, there is. I really do feel like there is times when we're on the lowest of lows and then we're on the highest of highs, and then it just obviously going 1-1 these last couple of games. You can see how we could say that we are, hot and cold, hot kind of up and down team. So I can't really answer that completely to where Andy wants it, but I'm gonna let you take a better crack at it. What do you think?
I think in terms of they've reached some high highs and some low lows. Um, maybe I don't think Orlando City were so bad prior to the MLS's back tournament, so I can't really say that they would outrank San Jose Earthquakes in that category. But just looking across the league, we've seen some pretty great performances from LAFC, for example, some pretty bad ones. You say the same thing for LA Galaxy. So I wouldn't say that they're the most up and down team in the league, but the differences are palpable. Like the types of San Jose Earthquakes performances we have seen this season, it feels like different seasons for other clubs in other leagues where that's how big the disparity is. But I think they're finally on the right track, so I'm pretty happy with that. Freddie at Freddie Smart One. Any updates on Fierro, Alanis, and Rios's contract? So Alanis and Fierro, they're part of that Chivas situation where Alanis for sure is on loan, so there is a possibility that San Jose Earthquakes have to say goodbye to him uh, after the loan ends, like they did with half of the Panamaniacs a few years ago. Well, do you think that these are players that they're likely to have their contracts extended, or maybe in Alanis' case, their loan deal made permanent?
Um, I couldn't really say. I feel like Andy just asked in that question. We're kind of the hot and cold, or up and down. I feel like we kind of seen that with these players that we're all talking about here. I mean, I feel like we haven't seen enough of Fierro to really deem if he is, good enough to stay or go. Alanis, he's obviously been injured a lot of the season, so it is also very hard to say if we can keep him around. As for Rios, I mean, same thing. I mean, like I said, we've seen Rios at his worst, and right now I think we're seeing Rios at his best. And I think it's kind of tough to really judge if we should keep all these guys. But I mean, I feel like as it's been for the Quakes with signing players and keeping players, I mean, I hope so. So we can try to keep some form of a team intact. And I think Matias probably wants these guys to stick around rather than leave. And I think if Matias really doesn't want them, he'll make that happen.
Yeah, I think the biggest indicator that they're likely here for a bit longer is because they are Almeida signings, and especially if they're turning a corner and they aren't playing badly right now, that there's no reason to not extend them. I think unless you're David Luiz, who had a horrible spell and managed to get his contract renewed in Arsenal for some odd reason, if you're playing good near the time that you need your contract renewed, even if you played badly before then, you can't turn away someone who's most recently played well. I think that that's a type of policy that a lot of teams have. Right now, I'm looking at transfermarket.us players on the end of their contract. I don't think it's totally updated because Jackson Ewell's on this list and he was recently renewed. But they are also listing Paul Marie, Eric Calvillo, Matt Bersano, Gilbert Fuentes, and Emmanuel Ochoa. I feel like other than Matt Bersano, I think all of them could get renewed. What do you think?
Yeah, out of all the players you named, I think all of them will probably be staying with the Quakes.
Yeah, I say Matt Bersano no because I think Emi Ochoa seems to be in that number 3 spot possibly for this upcoming season. Bersano lost out on getting that opportunity that JT Marcinkowski got when Vegas finally pulled out of the spot. So it shows that Bersano isn't quite up there at this point, and he's not a young player anymore. He's not an old one either, but he probably is like looking to go to a new club at this point.
Yeah, I think hopefully he can probably sign with a different club and try to get a starting spot somewhere else, and then probably in the MLS.
Or USL.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that either. Yeah, USL.
All right. So Freddie also asks, should we start Marcos Lopez when he returns from the Peruvian national team? So we saw some exceptional performances from the fullbacks in this games, Tommy Thompson and Nick Lima in particular. But I think the answer is yes, and there's not really a dilemma because Tommy Thompson is a versatile player. You can plug him into the midfield. So it's not like you're going to be punishing Tommy Thompson despite his good efforts because Nick Lima's back. He'll still get his game time.
Yeah, definitely. I don't see where there would be why we would say any question why Lopez wouldn't go back in the lineup. I think he's been playing to where we need him to be playing. You know, he's playing at one of his, I wouldn't say completely best, but he is playing at an all-time high for him right now in the season. And there's no question why we shouldn't keep him out there. And Tommy Thompson definitely is our Swiss Army knife kind of type player.
Yep. So Nestor at Valizi on Twitter asks, what are the chances of securing a home playoff game this season, given Almeida is changing his system defensively? And my initial reaction to that question, with all due respect, Nestor, is whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I think we cannot get greedy, especially with only 8 teams making the playoffs, that we just got to get in the playoffs. I don't care for the home team. I don't care for the away team. I don't care if we're playing in Canada. It doesn't matter. Like, just get to the playoffs. We'll figure it out when and if we get there. And if this is possible, maybe if they give the number 1 team in the West a bye and then they do a play-in round, that might boost the Quakes' chances of getting a playoff game for that first round, a home game for that first round. But if it's just a straight up single elimination 8-team bracket, which seems very likely with this Western Conference panned out the way it is for the playoffs, then you can't think about getting a home game. And the reality is, whether you're playing Portland home or away, whether you're playing Seattle home or away, or any of these teams really, you just got to get it done and you got to play well because they're going to play well too.
Yeah, and I don't know if necessarily it is a necessity to have a playoff spot at home. I mean, the Quakes haven't been playing their best at home. I know they've gotten a win recently at home, but I mean, with during this pandemic, is it that big of a deal? And we're not traveling really far, so I don't know if it's really going to be a big factor that if the Quakes don't get a playoff spot, a home game.
I think you have to be in a bit of a place of luxury in the playoff race when you start thinking about wanting to secure that home game in the first round. You're usually in the 1-4 conversation, and regardless of whatever league you're in, if you're having those kinds of thoughts. Rob at Epicentered on Twitter asks, what would you want the Quakes to invest in other than player signings and salary? That's a difficult question, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's two of the biggest things, right? I guess we did get a lot of questions last week about bad field. So invest in the field. Mean, other than the signing players and salary, I mean, what do we want the Quakes to invest in? A better field. I mean, where would you want your money?
I think that's the top priority when you take away the signings, that you need to invest in good field maintenance, because if your field looks like crap, you're not going to get the respect you deserve from other teams or from the media. It's going to be easy bait for people like Alexi Lawless and Taylor Twellman. You don't want to give them that easy bait, and you don't want that to be the only reason why they talk about you rather than talking about Atlanta United for the 10th time in that hour. So you got to improve that self-image. Also, obviously, I would invest in staff salaries, of course, during this time right now. That would be a good place as well. And maybe also on some, specifically, some medical staff. I think during this period where you're playing a lot of games in 3 or 4 days at a time, that having the best possible medical staff on your side will make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, why? I don't think any team would complain about having the best medical staff.
So, Sleeping in 21 asks, what has changed with the San Jose Earthquakes? And is that source of improvement sufficient enough to beat the teams that have been causing problems all the time? Teams like Seattle Sounders or Minnesota United. Um, I think what has changed is they have been able to play against some of the lesser teams in MLS table, but also that they've been taking their chances more regularly. And once you start putting a few in the back of the net, that confidence can transform a team. And I think that's probably the biggest change I think of, because this is still the same man marking system that Matias Almeida has been employing when they were losing. They haven't changed around the personnel of this team all that much, except when they had to get injuries and international duty. So I think that's probably it. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I mean, I think big change is they're finally playing pretty much complete games. If we've seen times where Quakes doesn't even seem like they show up and they're just kind of out there running around, and next thing you know, it's 3-0, 4-0, and I feel like at times we're finally seeing Quakes play almost a complete 90, and they are actually just improving game by game now. They finally, like you said, the goals coming and confidence and winning against teams that aren't the best it's just building. It's just building and building, and hopefully it builds up enough that we make the playoffs, and we never know what happens.
I think one other big change is that they're learning how to close games. Not only are they learning how to play 90 minutes, but they're learning how to see off a wave of attacks through set pieces, learning how to close halves, learning how to start halves better, albeit a bit of a blip in the radar with that Niazgoya brace right after halftime against Portland Trail, but Portland Timbers, not Trailblazers. I think that is a massive change that I've seen in the San Jose Earthquakes team, that they look a lot mentally stronger. And that was something that Chris Wondolowski talked about in the press conference, that mentally they've hit rock bottom at points in the season following those heavy losses, but they were finally able to regroup. Maybe the 8th or ninth player meeting was sufficient to finally make a shift in that regard.
Yeah, I think before we get on to the next question, I do definitely want to reiterate what you're saying that the Quakes are finally finishing games. I mean, we saw all last season how we didn't finish games and we didn't make the playoffs because of it. I mean, it's plain and simple. We did not finish many games last season where we were even when we had a lead. Quakes couldn't finish a game. It really seemed like more times than none that the Quakes didn't really finish a game towards the ending of that season. And then obviously in the beginning of this season, we saw how many times that there was times where we score a goal and we would give it up just like that. And finally, when the Quakes are definitely making that change where they are taking a lead and they're not giving it up.
Dan on Twitter asks, has Tanner Beeson cemented himself as a first-choice center back option? Do you see Kashia's role dwindling with perhaps his contract expiring at the end of the season? Thanks for mentioning that, transfermarket.us. And how do you see Matias balancing his youth movement against making a push to secure the playoffs? So let's start with the Tanner Beeson spot. Tanner Beeson's played very well, but right now I still think if you have the option of your 4 center backs and they're all healthy, like you need them the other choices for other reasons than you need Tanner Beeson. Tanner Beeson is a decent all around center back, but Youngworth, he knows how he's a good one-on-one defender and a good last-ditch defender. So I definitely want to see Youngworth on the field whenever possible, whether it be as a center back or a CDM. I think Alanis is pretty good technically. He's good playing out the back. And Kashia, he's a physical presence that this team needs both defensively and offensively on set pieces. So it does make it tough for Tanner Beeson to get consistent playing time, but he is starting to make it more and more of a conversation.
It definitely is. My question to you before I really answer this Tanner Beeson question is: so if all four were healthy, who would you have out there? Would you have Alanis and Kashi out there, or how would you have it?
Ideally, if I had to just pick them two for center back positions, I think it would be Kashia and Youngworth. But if I can accommodate them into the lineup elsewhere, I think Youngworth as a CDM, maybe in place of Yitson, and you have Alanis and Kashia is pretty good too.
Very interesting. I mean, I don't know if we can go into real, keep going back and forth about that, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's especially because I don't know if would Matthias actually take out just in for Youngworth, and actually, I just feel like we've done Flo. I know he can play both positions, but I would rather him be just in one position. I don't like him going back and forth. I feel like it kind of messes with his game a little bit. But I mean, I don't. We can keep answering the questions. I'll answer the rest of the question. But I was just curious to that thought from you. But as far as I guess how I would take it for the Tanner Beeson being cemented himself, like you said, he's been playing super well. I just don't know if we're gonna just. We saw what happened when we brought Alanis back. I mean, yes, he was injured, and Kasia has been at least, being fit and playing for the Georgia national team. So I don't know if we'll see a big change. Maybe I do see Kasia going back in the starting lineup, but maybe if he doesn't play up to par, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Beeson right back in the lineup the next game.
So the next part of the question was Kashia's role dwindling, and I'm not sure. It would surprise me if Kashia started the next game he's able to for the Quakes, but it also wouldn't surprise me because of this center back situation if they want to ease him back into the lineup too.
Yeah, I will see what Matthias really comes up with. I mean, I think Tanner has really stepped up to Kasha being gone, and that's why we're getting these questions because he's making it a chance for him to be the number one guy.
All right, and then the last part of that was about balancing the youth movement as well as making the playoff push. And I don't think that those two are contradicting each other. I think the youth players, granted, a lot of them are coming on as late subs and in games that have already been won, like against the Whitecaps and Galaxy. But we know Cal can play. We know Beeson can play. Kanye didn't look too bad when he started in defense. We know Calvillo can play, so it's not necessarily like we're putting so much pressure on them and we're worried that they're going to cost us a playoff spot. I think San Jose Earthquakes will win or lose a playoff spot not because of their youth players, but because of their team as a whole.
Yeah, I don't see this youth movement that Matthias is trying to implement is going to affect the Quakes making a playoff spot. Yeah, like you said, you've been seeing them off come as late subs, so I think that'll still be what's going to see, and we're gonna need them to come off as late subs. Hopefully, they can produce.
William Bond on Facebook asks, how many more points would the Quakes have if Vega was benched after his error against the Whitecaps in MLS's back tournament? And I don't have a calculator on me, so the short answer is that the Quakes would be much higher in the table. I don't know if they would be in the top four, but possibly it would definitely be higher than seventh. And I think that it's just a perplexing situation that it took this long to replace Daniel Vega. I love him as a person, and he seems like he can have a role maybe as a uh, veteran on the bench to help give JT Marcinkowski some pointers. But right now, Marcinkowski is the number one keeper and should be for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, no question that JT should be out there for the rest of the season. And also, just if we did, I mean, we would have to really break down the schedule from in July to really see, if how much of a difference there would have been made. But we can at least safely say that there would at least been a little bit of definitely a difference, and we wouldn't be probably sitting at seventh.
Matt at Matt3Leo on Twitter asks, what's stopping Calvillo from playing in that box-to-box role. He mentioned specifically a box-to-box striker role, but I feel like he meant midfielder because the term is usually box-to-box midfielder. And he also added in parentheses, apart from Rio scoring and assisting recently, but that's kind of the answer. I think also Cavillo's one of those players where, like, when he's played, he's been playing great, but some of the more established players like Tommy Thompson, Yidson, Jackson Ewell, they aren't struggling enough to warrant making a more consistent lineup change right now with him. So Calvillo is just, unfortunately, he's got to play his role right now, but we know that when he is called upon, that he's going to give us good minutes.
Yeah, and that's what we want. I mean, that's what the Quakes need right now. I mean, like we talk about all the time, how Quakes don't bring players in, they don't sign anybody, and so the players that we have, they got to execute when we call them.
His other question was, Eason's been playing well. Can we trust him to play against the Sounders up next, even without Rui Diaz? And I think regardless of what defenders you have in front of Nicholas Ladero and Jordan Morris, and to a lesser extent players like Jovan Jones, sorry, I think it's going to be a danger no matter what. I think there's going to be a chance that Tanner Beeson could be isolated or targeted by its Sounders because he is the least experienced defender in that situation. But I think he is capable of playing well. He played well against LAFC, so maybe he's not going to be too much of a liability against the Sounders.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a real test. I mean, if we see an amazing Tanner Beeson game and, the Quakes win like a 1-0 game or whatever the case is, I mean, then I guess we could really start talking about him solidifying himself as one of the top center back roles. I mean, big games like this for a young player is, it could be huge.
Yeah, I'll have to pull up another document from this one, but so the last question comes from our friend and co-host Fabi. He wants us both to pick 11 players that we would protect in an expansion draft. Wando, because he's Wando, of course. Espinoza and Vaco, they are our DPs, so we do want to keep them around. And Wando is also a DP too, so I guess that'd be a reason for him as well. Definitely protecting Cowell, Ewell, Thompson, Lima, and Lopez. So that's 8. And then I think Beeson is definitely someone we're going to want to keep an eye on. So that's 9. The last 2 were pretty tough. It came down to the likes of Calvillo, Youngworth, Kashia, Jidson, and Fierro. Ultimately, I think Calvillo is young enough that he still has some upside and he's going to be around for a bit. And Youngworth is very important to the team in many different ways. So I did have to leave the likes of Kashia, Yidson, and Fierro unprotected. What do you think?
Yeah, I had definitely, obviously, some similarities. I went with JT, Lopez.
Oh, dang it. You know what? I'm sorry, Calvillo. I got to protect JT.
There you go. I was waiting.
But wait. Actually, I'll scratch out Beeson. Sorry. Calvillo was on the podcast, so you get protected.
Oh, just off that. That is terrible.
But Calvillo's also been pretty good, too.
Yeah, it's true. But, so, yeah.
Yeah.
I went with,
He's not going to want to come back if I don't protect him in this fake MLS expansion draft, although there will be a real one soon because we know Charlotte's on their way.
That is true. They are on the way. So I went with JT, Lopez. I went with Beeson, Lima, Tommy. That was one of my big vets. Tommy Thompson, Espinoza, Flo, Cade, and I went with another young guy. I did with Paul Marie.
Paul Marie. Interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like he has a lot of upside. And then I went with Vaco and Jackson.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, some tough decisions for sure. And I'm just going to check real quick if we did answer Fabi's question. Yeah, it was just about which we protect. Like, we're not going to try to predict who Charlotte would pick from our team. Hopefully nobody, but we'll see. Let's take a look into the MLS standings while also briefly congratulating Reno 1868 for winning their first round playoff match against Los Dos, LA Galaxy 2. So they moved on to the quarterfinals. They'll be facing Phoenix Rising, Didier Drogba's former team, while he was at the USL level. So that's going to be an exciting match. I'll definitely be checking that one out on ESPN Plus. So the Eastern Conference standings, Toronto's up top with 38 points. They're the frontrunners for this Supporter Shield, followed by Philadelphia Union with 35. Columbus Crew is checking in at third. Orlando City fourth. Then New England in fifth. Both New York teams, City followed by Red Bull, sixth and seventh. Nashville, 21 points, eighth place. They're doing pretty well in their first year. Montreal Impact, 20 points in ninth. That last playoff spot, as horrible as they've been for points of the season, is currently occupied by Atlanta United. And then outside the playoff spots, you have Chicago Fire on 19 points. So Atlanta United just barely ahead. So Chicago is at 11th. Inter Miami, 18 points. Cincinnati, 16th. And then at the bottom, DC United with 12 points. Even that, they had a 2-1 lead against Philadelphia Union with, I think, Mark McKenzie equalized. So that was a blow for DC United. They really needed those 2 points to have any shot, I think. Right now, with only so many games left, I think DC United are starting to fall out of it. But what are your thoughts on the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like not much has changed from last time, but obviously some just news from the Eastern Conference was obviously the transfer for the Philadelphia Union, their young stud, only until January.
Brendan Aronson.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of his name. I didn't want to butcher it or mess it up. So, but thank you. And I think obviously the little trade between DC United and Inter Miami. I mean, Federico Higuain, the brothers are there in Miami, so they better step it up, man, if they want to get in the playoffs.
I mean, I know we have the Roldan brothers and the Char brothers in the Western Conference already, but still, I want all of the brothers to face each other in every MLS season that they're together. So make it happen for the 2021 schedule. Seattle versus Inter Miami and Portland versus Inter Miami. I don't care what else you got to do to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be something a story to build on for the MLS.
Yep. For the Western Conference, and one more note on the Eastern Conference, all top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference, from Toronto down to Orlando City in fourth, they would have more points than the top of the Western Conference. So that is an interesting situation there. So in first place in the West, we have Seattle Sounders on 30 points. Portland Timbers are also on 30 points. They're just behind in second. Third place is Sporting Kansas City, 29 points. They're flying under the radar, but they are looking solid. Fourth place is LAFC with 24 points. They're starting to shake off some of their earlier struggles. Fifth place is FC Dallas with 24 points, followed by Minnesota United with 23 points in sixth. And then tied on points, but lower on goal difference, is San Jose Earthquakes, 23 points. Minnesota United continue to beat the crap out of San Jose Earthquakes every chance they get, but we're tied on points. Let's go. Eighth place, Vancouver Whitecaps, 21 points. They're in the last playoff spot in the West. Real Salt Lake is down there in ninth with 21. Colorado's in 10th with 19, but they have many games in hand due to COVID restrictions costing them games right now. 11th is Houston Dynamo with 19. And then lastly is LA Galaxy still on 15 points. They have 2 games in hand on San Jose Earthquakes. And also of note, every team above San Jose Earthquakes has 1 or 2 games in hand. So that will temper celebrations a little bit. But still, like, you got to be happy with where San Jose Earthquakes are right now.
Yeah, I mean, every fan should be happy that we're in a playoff spot, but there's just a lot of other, questions to look at. Or things to say about these standings. First off, tip your hats off to Vancouver. We were talking about how bad Vancouver was a week ago, and they're right below us. When I saw that the other day, I was like, what? Why is Vancouver on the playoffs next to us? I thought they were not even going to be, in contention. But see what happens when you win a couple of games. And the other big thing is we need to talk about is the Colorado Rapids and all this COVID issues that they're having. I mean, their games keep getting postponed. I mean, are they going to actually finish their season or not? I mean, I think that is a big question to talk about, is what's going to happen with the Colorado Rapids season.
Yeah, I have no idea because just looking ahead at the remaining schedule for the San Jose Earthquakes, you have October 18th, they play Seattle Sounders at home. That'll be the only game we'll cover for next week's podcast. Then October 24th is the Whitecaps game at Providence Park. 28th is RSL at home. November 1st is LAFC at home. And then we wrap up the regular season with Seattle Sounders away on November 8th. There's a 6-day gap between the 18th and 24th, and then a 1-week gap between the 1st and 8th. So if it's similar for Colorado Rapids, I haven't looked at their schedule. They don't have too many opportunities to reschedule all their games. They can probably fit one in that first gap, in that second gap, and then there's, I think, a Wednesday open at the end of the season for one more. But I think they've already missed like 4 games at least. So I think if I were MLS, if you were able to completely kick out Nashville and FC Dallas from the MLS's back tournament due to COVID, you might have to do something similar with Colorado for this playoffs as well. If they can't play enough games to get to the playoff line, don't let them make them up. If they continue to have games canceled, I think one more game. If they cancel one more game for the Rapids, I think, sorry, that's it. Your season's a wrap. Their remaining opponents can play each other, and then you go from there.
Yeah, I hope that the MLS is taking this, into consideration, that this might be it for the Rapid season due to COVID, and it's, unfortunately, that's what's going to have to come down to. Hopefully, it doesn't really, affect the standings too much because of these games that couldn't have been played.
All right, and just one more look at the schedule, strictly on a Quakes perspective. 2 games left against the Sounders is a bit daunting, and you can't take LAFC for granted. I think while Whitecaps and RSL, they aren't easy wins, I don't think. But because they're so close to the Quakes in the standings, and because of who else is left on the roster, you got to get 6 points against those two to really give yourself a good chance to make it to the playoffs. You don't want to, with 2 games left to go, have to be begging for points against LAFC and Seattle Sounders to make the playoffs, to make ground up the table.
Yeah, those are going to be probably the big. I mean, those 2 games are probably the biggest games for the season for the Quakes, for the rest of the season at least, definitely.
All right, then. Do you have a prediction for the Seattle Sounders at home, which will be the next game we cover in this podcast?
I really always like to be on the more positive side, but it's going to probably be a 2-1 loss for the Sounders.
I'm going to go a 1-0 loss for the Sounders. I think the Sounders, they are starting to patch up holes in what was once a problematic defense with Javier Arriaga picking up a yellow card every game. But I think they're looking really solid all around. They did lose to LAFC, but losing to LAFC even in this season is not something to be ashamed of. I think this will be a good test for the Quakes. I think we would like to get at least a point like they did in MLS's back tournament. But if you can keep it close and play some good soccer and have something to build on, like you maybe score a goal or you make a big save, you can bring that into Whitecaps as well as take that 6-day gap to heal up and get prepared, then this should be fine. You just don't want to see another 7-0 situation.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to take probably one of our best games against the Sounders and bring all the momentum to the next game against the resurgence of the Whitecaps.
Any closing thoughts?
No. Let's just hopefully we can finish the season. I mean, I think we're at a point where we should think that we should be making the playoffs, and the Quakes just need to finish. And that was the problem last year, and I don't want it to be the same this year.
The end is in sight. The gaps between games are manageable for the most part. Just gotta pick up points regularly and see whatever else happens with the rest of this MLS table. And we want to thank again our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, official scarf supplier to MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your team at roughneckscarves.com. Tired of the same old uniforms and cookie cutter templates from Nike and Adidas? Looking for a unique, complete custom kit for your youth club, Sunday League squad, adult, or even pro team? Icarus FC can help you create the kit of your dreams at an affordable price. Let them help you design your custom new kit today at IcarusFC.com. Where can we find you on Twitter, Will?
You can find me at BP_Schneider on Twitter. Please hit me up for any questions or just you want to talk about the games.
Yeah, we're always down to talk about games, whether it's the match day before the game, sometimes during the game, even after the game. We're always down to talk. It's always fun interacting with you fans on Twitter. You can follow me at Ivan Ornelas 2, and you can follow Tectonic Takes at Tectonic Takes on Twitter as well. If you want to submit questions for the next podcast, you can message any of us, Will, myself, or Bobby, or the Tectonic Takes Twitter account as well, and we'll try to get you in for the next show. If you enjoy our content and you want to get more perks and maybe help this program out, you can join us on Patreon. There's no obligation to, and if you're struggling due to the COVID situation, we understand. I guess whoever honked that car either really does or really doesn't want to join our Patreon, but that's okay. And keep an eye out for more content. We recently interviewed Quincy Amarikwa, and it was an incredible experience. He has so much to talk about. He is always thinking about different aspects of soccer in his life and his projects, and he is just one of many great people that we've had the pleasure of interviewing on here. So definitely check out all our content if you haven't already. We encourage you to be active on Quakes social media, such as the supporters Facebook group, the official Discord, and the subreddit. And that really does make a difference and makes the season a lot fun for everybody when more people are active on those sites. And go Quakes!
Go Quakes!